Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 2 of Squat Cobbler. Episode 1 was epic. Is that the word you'd use, Kelly?
Yeah, we'll use that word. That's a good word.
It was epic. That's what I would use. It was epic as only a debut episode of a podcast with the two of us could possibly be. So I feel like the bar has been set really high. It's going to be difficult for us to get there, but we're going to do our best. Let's do the formal introductions. I'm Mike. You can find me at OfficialPagan on Twitter. And Kelly, where can people find you?
When not detained, I'm available on Twitter at KELLYTHUL. Boy, it seems like it's been a long time since we've been together, Mike.
It has, yeah. It's been quite some time. I think we've both changed. We've both grown as people, but we still find that common ground that brings us together. And that's what I like about the relationship that we have.
Yeah, we'll go with that. That sounds good. So for today's show, I think go ahead and have you kick us off if you are so inclined.
Okay, I guess I can do that. So, are you familiar with a movie?
Yes. Yes, I am. I am very familiar. Actually, I am familiar with 2 movies. Not to show up.
No, I'm sorry. I just kind of completely blanked on that, what my recommendation was. I'm like, hey, are you familiar with a movie?
Do you need a moment to collect yourself?
No, I really do. I think I need to actually look at the record and check the credits on it.
Okay, well, I'll let... this is going swimmingly. Yeah, this is the second show. You're going to have these things from time to time.
There's going to be little things that you're going to have to work out here and there.
Okay, well, I'll give my recommendation. I'm going to warn you, it's not a lengthy recommendation.
So, okay, well, let's hear yours. It's really your social media recommendation that I want to get to, because I feel like that's where we really nailed it last episode.
Yeah, that was it. Yeah, it depends on the edit. So my recommendation today is an app, and it's a game. It's a time-wasting game, so there's nothing better than finding ways to waste time on your phone, and there's plenty of fun things out there to do it with. This one excels at wasting time and being frustrating, kind of just keeps you busy without a whole lot of mental challenge. Although you got to kind of be thinking on it. So the name of the game, or the name of the app, is 2048. And of course, Mike, you know 2048's a factor of 2, right? You knew that.
Obviously.
I didn't need to tell you that. Maybe for some
I was honestly wondering if you knew that.
Yeah. I learned it after I downloaded 2048. But it's a very simple game in terms of when you open up the app, it's a 4x4 grid, and you have 2 tiles on there, and they're both the number 2. And you slide them together, and they become the number 4. And then a new number 2 shows up. And the whole objective of the game is to connect 2 of the same number to create the next factor of there. So your 2s become 4s, which become 8s. 16, 64, 128, etc. The objective is to keep sliding those bad boys around until you get to 2048. Say that that's the objective. I've not quite reached that, but you can. It keeps track. You get points for every time you do it, so you just kind of continue to kind of slide it around. And it gets into when you slide a particular tile. If you slide it to the left, all the tiles slide to the left. If you slide it up, all the tiles slide up, etc. And so you've got to kind of keep strategically thinking, well, if I do this, am I going to line these up? Am I going to get my 16s lined up so I can create a 32? All that good stuff. It's a good thing. So you just kind of swipe away. You look like you're busy. Might be, doing something important if someone's looking at you while you're playing on your phone. But what happens is when you don't set yourself up to kind of connect 2 together, it's still going to drop another tile. So as the game goes on, your 4x4 grid gets fuller and fuller and fuller to the point at which eventually it just fills it all the way up, and that's when the game's over, if you've unsuccessfully continued to pull them together. So it's a great real fun app. It's free. It's available on Apple and Android platforms. Highly frustrating. Fun to do. I'll find my high score and share it in the blog post, which is not a particularly impressive high score. So if you guys get it, you can kind of mock me and tell me how much better you're doing. I'm sure Mike, being the wizard that you are, with factors of 2,
right?
You will upon probably your initial play, you outdistance me.
There's one thing that I've been saying is really missing from modern gaming, Kelly. It's math.
So that's my game, and I can go play it now if you need a little bit of time.
No, I'm good. I remembered all right. One small lapse in memory doesn't make up for all of your lapses in judgment on this show so far, Kelly.
there's a point there. I think. I'll give you that.
So my recommendation is actually a movie soundtrack. So have you ever heard of the film It Follows?
In my long tradition of movies I should know about and don't, because you seem to bring up a pretty big list. No, never even heard of it.
Okay, you need to go out and watch that movie. This is almost like a double recommendation now. I know my last one was a movie soundtrack as well. That's an awesome movie. You should have already seen it, but It Follows is like a smaller, more current indie movie. It's only a couple of years old. You should definitely go out and see it. And then the next thing you're going to want to do right after you watch it is go and buy the soundtrack by Disasterpeace on vinyl. It's amazing. It's a very old school synthesizer heavy soundtrack. Picture like John Carpenter movies, a lot of great 70s and 80s movie scores when they really first started experimenting with synthesizers and moving away from the more traditional orchestral scores. It's a great, great soundtrack. It's an awesome movie. Do not, though, going into either the soundtrack or the film, I highly recommend that you do not read any reviews online, because most of the reviews that I had seen about the film before I actually saw it for myself either praised it as the greatest thing they've ever seen or ripped it apart as being absolutely terrible. Do you ever, are you a review guy? Do you check out reviews before you get into stuff?
Not really. If there's particular kind of buzz on Twitter, if it's something new and there's a lot of folks kind of weighing in on one piece or another, I'll pay some attention to that. But I tend to, unless there's just something really obvious, everybody's of the same opinion, I'll pay some attention to that. But I kind of prefer to kind of consume reviews after I've seen it to kind of see what I agree and disagree with in terms of that.
I'm actually exactly the same way. I typically go and look up reviews right after I watch a movie or listen to an album. I don't really do too much research in that sense beforehand. The only research I'll kind of do into something is maybe I'll look up, who played on something or where it was recorded and things like that. What's cool about this movie, though, plays into the soundtrack, which is something a movie score to me should be not just complement the film and complement what you're seeing, but be able to stand on its own as a piece of music. And that's the problem with, in my opinion, and they're great, great scores, but some of those big orchestral scores, if you listen to that as a standalone piece of music, it doesn't work independent of the film. And that to me is what makes, say, the John Carpenter scores and things like that completely different, because you can listen to a John Carpenter score as an album, separate completely from the film. You don't ever have to have seen the film, whereas a lot of these big orchestral scores use cues for what's on screen, and not that these synth scores don't, but when you have these big build-ups and cues on things, they don't work independently of the visual. And what's cool about this is it's a really visually interesting film. It's almost like the way that I would describe it, and this is the only thing I'm going to kind of give away or describe about the film, is think of like steampunk. Only with steampunk, you're mixing together Victorian era stuff with sci-fi futuristic things. Think of it as steampunk, but 80s steampunk. So replace Victorian era with the 80s. And that's kind of what you're going in. It looks like late 80s, early 90s set, but then there's weird technology that doesn't fit into it.
So like a big Floby with copper and gears on it.
Maybe that's a bad example. It's kind of hard to explain. It really is a very unique movie, and it makes for a cool watching experience. But the soundtrack, which was composed by and performed by Disasterpeace, is really great. It's a great standalone album and has a great kind of retro vintage sound to it, which is why I'm particularly recommending that if you have the ability to do so, try and listen to it on vinyl. It sounds awesome. The record has a great cover, which is different than the CD cover. Some cool artwork. The one that I have is on a white vinyl, so that's pretty cool as well. Are you a vinyl guy?
See, that's a trick question. That is totally a trick question. I have quite a bit. I had developed a pretty decent record collection prior to the other media becoming available, and I still enjoy it. It's just making sure I have decent enough equipment to play it on from there. But yeah, I still enjoy it, and it is. There's a difference. There's no doubt. Alicia Holm, who's been on Nurture and Sport a number of times, she's also a musician like you, and she's a huge vinyl fan. Yeah, I like it. I just part of it is that I like the greater latitude folks had to work with an album cover to do some art stuff. Back in the day with Alice Cooper, he took full advantage of for a series of their albums. Each one of them, School's Out made itself into, you could fold it into a desk. $1 Billion Babies was a giant snakeskin wallet. From the inside, had all kind of doors and stuff you could open for the insane asylum. So it's pretty cool stuff. But yeah, I like vinyl. I got a couple picture discs. Sometimes not as good audio wise, but they look cool.
Right, they look awesome. Actually, can I sneak in a really, really shameless plug since you brought up picture discs?
Sure.
So an advanced track off of Christian, who was a guest on a previous episode of ours, if you remember, you recall?
Yeah, I recall.
We along with a gentleman that you have been on a podcast with before, Carl Kevorkian, who had done the Loud and Loaded Halloween special with us, and the Sharknado episode for Snark Week. Carl, Christian, and I did a song together, and that is going to be released on a postcard picture disc. So it's going to look like a postcard that you would receive in the mail, like a regular 5x7 postcard, but there's a hole punched in the center, and you can throw it on a turntable and listen to the song.
Cool. Very cool.
So just a shameless.
How does one get that?
So if we're going for full on crazy plug, you'll, I'm sure, be able to get it from officialpagan.com.
Yeah, I have a Rocky Horror Picture Show picture disc, Alice Cooper for written only picture disc,
Yeah, I have a couple of really cool picture discs, but I don't play them at all. I just have them.
Yeah.
But that's a lot of what happens when you become a collector of something. Like you start buying things because it's cool looking rather than its practical value per se. Like I have, for vinyl, I guess I have probably around 5,000 records. And I would say that at least a few hundred of those are things that I bought because of the way they looked rather than the actual content of the album. Not that they're not good albums, but there are things I specifically bought for the packaging or whatever the case might be, whether it was a picture disc or came with something weird.
Yeah, I've got a few of those split ends, it was an 80s new wave punky, not new wave, not punk, new wave group. They kind of laser etched imagery, so it wasn't a picture disc, but it was regular black vinyl, but they had done some things so that you get kind of reflections off and see some things on there, which is that album was purchased exclusively for that. Alrighty, hey, so we got our recommendations out of the way. Mike, do you have a social media recommendation for the gang today?
You know what? Since we already brought him up this episode and he was our first guest that we had, I'm going to say that Christian Menses, you can go online. You can find our new music together at officialpagan.com. Another shameless plug thrown in there. Or you can look for him on Twitter or just, you know what? Google it and roll the dice.
Yeah, apparently that's an interesting Google search. So and forgive me for not recalling, but how did you pronounce Christian's last name previously?
I don't remember. Before he was on the show, though, I guess you sent him a link to an episode, and he was my social media recommendation, or I mentioned him, whatever it might have been, on that episode. Oh. And he said that I mispronounced his name. So he was very upset by that, so I needed to rectify that right away as soon as we had him on the show.
And now you, the ultimate make good. He's your social media recommendation, and you even pronounced his name right. So
I know. See, I'm a good guy like that. Who's your social media recommendation this week, Kelly?
I couldn't come close to matching yours, so we'll just go with yours for this week.
See, you weren't prepared, Kelly.
I wasn't. I think we've mentioned before. Yeah, we're excited to do Squat Cobbler. We're filler. We're something right till Nurture and Support refires up. We're kind of out there, but even in Nurture and Support, Mel and I had a hard time both coming up every show with social media recommendations. So handing it back and forth, maybe not having them some shows. We'll just see what happens.
I personally am looking forward to what kind of guests we have in the future.
I am too. I am very interested to see what future guests will join us on Squat Cobbler. Oddly enough, Nurture and Support was a slightly easier thing to drop on someone and say, hey, got a podcast. It's called Nurture and Support. Want to be on it? I think you were going to get different answers when we say, oh, yeah, it's called Squat Cobbler.
What's it called? Oh, that's not important. Listen, what's important
is... It's just a podcast.
Actually, now that you say that, I think I actually did not tell Christian what the name of the show was. I think I just told him I'm doing a podcast. Do you want to be on it? And he said yes. So I think the first time he heard it is when you said Squat Cobbler, which is why it got such a big laugh from him.
Yeah, that's probably a better approach.
So that, I feel like I have to go and apologize to him now for the shock value you brought to
Yeah,
that
it was.
episode.
I got a little edgy. I'm sorry. I'm going to try and reel it back in.
Try and rein in. Like, I feel like it's my job to make sure that I keep you in line, because I feel like that was Mel's job before, and now it's my job. Kelly, you need to stay on the straight and narrow here. Don't go throwing us too far to the wind.
Yeah, that's going to work out just fine. What could
I will be
possibly
your
go wrong with
moral
that?
compass.
And on that note, we are going to sign off from Squat Cobbler show number 2, and we will chat with everybody again next week. Thanks for listening.
Thanks, guys.